A very warm welcome to Librarians Knowledge Sharing Workshop 2019. A very warm welcome to Alice Smith School and a very warm welcome to a very warm welcome to Alice Smith School Libraries. In some ways, Librarians Knowledge Sharing Workshop is getting a bit of a 7-year itch of some sort, because the first Librarians Knowledge Sharing Workshop was at this campus, and there's actually quite a few of you here who were actually at that event. And there were, I think it was, I can't remember, Bob, was it 28 or 32? Or that was the order of magnitude in terms of numbers here. A lot of us have been to many of the events in the subsequent years. So I can't find the clicker. Here we go. But what is important for me before I hand over to full introductions is just a little bit of housekeeping that would always get done at these events. Before I mention everything important like fires and bombs, I know that Wi-Fi is important. Okay? So on the back of your badges, you've got the information for the SSID logon and the password. I hope you'll find that that's working. Emergency alarms, to be honest, I'm not going to go through them because there are enough Alice Smith School staff here to lead you through what would need to happen with the different alarms. Evacuation sounds like some giant robot cicada. Lockdown alarm is different, and if you think that World War III is starting, that means that we're about to get a lightning strike. Okay? It's very important to us that you wear your lanyards, because that is our security check throughout the event for all of our security staff to know that you are registered at this event. I'll skip back. Bathrooms, they're important, and with this number of people, we could have a reasonable amount of pressure on bathrooms. In the area where we had our tea and coffee beforehand, there are adult bathrooms in that zone, but not so many. If you went out of the door and turned just back a little way, like only about 20 meters, there are some adult bathrooms outside our main assembly hall, which is back on back with this space here. If at break time there is a bigger rush, and we needed to, you could ask some Alice Smith School staff to help you. There's a toilet block underneath the main school building as well. Presentations management, helping us today and tomorrow. We've got the staff from Garden School, so you can see Sarah Sheldon down here at the front at the moment, and Roger Fortune will be helping her with that. For the UNHCR books, we will say more about that later, but the table over in the corner over there. For anyone who didn't bring any books and feels that they would like to buy one and put one in, I did quickly run into a super cheeky but good bookshop, Book Excess, and there's a pile of books that I purchased. They've got the price on. There's a box with a bow on it behind, which is being treated as an honesty box. You can throw the ring in that and take one of the books that I purchased and add it to that collection. I've got extra things in here. Breaks. Back where we had our opening registration in what we call PLC, and you can all have already seen that space is under quite a lot of pressure with what is more than 100 people in it. Please do use the seminar rooms, the 3 seminar rooms at the back as part of that, and including having your lunch. Contacts information, and I sent that out in a hurry this morning, which we promised that we would share that with all who agreed to share. And at lunchtime today, I need you to know that in the largest space in the PLC at the back, in what we call SG7, this is just the largest space at the back, there will be an optional lunchtime presentation by Brian Gurwitz of Belinda Borrow Box for those people who'd like to find out more about that. So now it's time for some formal introductions to Alice Smith School. So first, I would like to introduce Sarah Howling, who is our campus principal here at Climate Hub.
Over the top. Good morning, everybody, and a very, very warm welcome to a very cold room. Those of you that haven't rubbed up, as soon as you've walked in, we've turned one of the ACs off. It is a bit arctic in here. Please do let us know if we can make you more comfortable. Unfortunately, the temperature control is not great, but we can turn them on and off to just to ease your temperature during the course of the day. So a very warm welcome to Alice Smith. We are delighted to be able to host the knowledge sharing workshop for you this year. I'd like on behalf of the school and also hopefully on behalf of you as well to say a huge thank you to Rob, to Soyka, to the library teams and to everyone else that's been involved in putting together this conference and all of our presenters. We know that you're going to have an amazing 2 days, lots and lots of fantastic learning to take place, sharing to take place, and lots of good connections being made as well. I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to be here with you this morning, so we've got Mr. Dave Potts, who's going to give some welcoming remarks on behalf of the school as well. But from my part, a huge, big, warm welcome. We are delighted to have you here at Alice Smith. We hope you enjoyed the conference, and we hope you enjoy our campus as well. Thank you so much for coming and enjoying 2 days.
Good morning, everyone. As Sarah said, my name is Dave Potts. I'm the Vice Principal of Learning Teaching here at this very magical place. And I'm playing the position of super sub today. As you know, Sarah wasn't sure she could make it, and so I prepared a few words which I hope will set the tone for you over the course of the next couple of days. When I thought about what to say to you this morning, I asked myself, what do libraries mean to us? What does one instinctively recall when contemplating the great institution that is the library? What do libraries mean to us individually? In broad terms, one might associate libraries with the freedom of information or an egalitarian belief in the right to access education through literature. For each individual, there may be quite personal or nostalgic answers, perhaps relating to the very buildings and rooms in which they explored their first books as a child, where they developed a love for a particular author, discovered a historical event or scientific revelation, or were inspired by their first encounter with poetry. However, to those of us in education, perhaps a particular prominent association one might make with libraries is Dewey. Dewey could be considered to learning what Einstein was to physics. Bear with me. Through theory, observation and calculation, he plotted a reasoned and navigable path through the mysteries of the learning process. And in so doing, he created structures and ways of thinking that are still highly relevant today, so many decades after his work was done. Forgive me if I'm not making myself clear. I'm not referring to the man who created the decimalised system, which we so greatly value for its capacity to logically organise limitless printed tones by their distinct themes, i.e. a certain Melville Dewey. Although his contribution is still a hugely important one to the library world, he's not quite the man who springs to my mind when I think of the ways in which libraries are still so important today. Instead, this particular Dewey is the educational theorist John Dewey, who would have been about 17 at the time his namesake Melville devised the decimalised system. Even before the theories of Piaget and Vygotsky were widely known, Dewey spoke about how children learn best when they're actively involved with the school curriculum, rather than being passive recipients of knowledge. He believed children were better served if they took a lead role in the process of their own learning, and he placed greater emphasis on the social context of learning, which at the turn of the 20th century were radical ideas. He argued that for education to be most effective, children should be given learning opportunities that enable them to link present content to previous experiences and knowledge. Yet another feature of Dewey's theories was the need for learners to engage directly with their environment in what became known as experiential learning, and which later led to a number of other similar approaches, such as problem-based learning and inquiry-based learning. Dewey was, however, wary of placing too much emphasis on a child's abilities alone. and prefer to place its trust in a more balanced approach to education, where teachers, students and content were given equal importance in the learning equation. Ultimately, his belief was that teachers should not be in the classroom to simply act as instructors, but should adopt the role of facilitator and guide, giving students the opportunities to discover for themselves and develop as active and independent learners. It's these beliefs and values that libraries have always promoted and given life to. Libraries are not simply repositories of text, organised for ease of access by virtue of a logical classification system, neatly arranged shelving, and unassuming clerical staff. They are, in fact, entire learning universes, filled with worlds of lived experience, scientific exploration, great fiction, art, and imagination, created and led by gatekeepers such as yourselves, who enable students to navigate established knowledge, and in doing so realise their potential to expand our universe through the creation of new knowledge. Never more so has this been the case than now, as technology reframes the way we produce, evaluate and use information, and indeed the way we learn. Libraries provide the flexibility, the space